Yay! Zen Money Monday. Khierstyn, I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Same here. It's been a while coming, but we got it. We got here.
We did. I want to have a little conversation about how you got to where you are, because you've done quite a few different things, but you've always been pretty successful when you put your mind to it. But these days, you're really helping people jump into product-based businesses, but that wasn't always what you were doing.
No. I've spent the last 4 years primarily having conversation and helping people launch products on Kickstarter. And what I found, while it's great, and I love launching products, that's what I do, I found that when I got a really great working relationship with someone and really got into the product, and we got massive results where, we'd walk away from Kickstarter launches with hundreds, if not thousands of new customers. I just found, I was like, crap, how am I supposed to keep working with this person? And I found that while crowdfunding gave me my niche and it put my name on the map online and built the credibility, it also pigeonholed me into one very specific thing. And so I've spent the last really 6 or 8 months looking to pivot to how do I not necessarily get out of Kickstarter, but how do I increase the conversation to include really the early stage.
Hang on a second. Sorry about that.
No worries. Do you want to see what he wanted?
No, because he knew I was going to be recording.
Should we start again?
Yeah. There was good stuff in there. I have to figure out where to cut it off. I'm going to make you do it all over again. Not all over again. Let's go back to, sorry.
Let's just start from the top. It'll be okay. That way. Yeah.
It'll be better. Okay. I can splice in the welcome part though. So what I'm curious though is about how you got into doing what you're doing now, because you haven't always been doing product-based businesses and you haven't always helped people launch stuff in the online interweb space.
Yeah. How far back do you want me to go?
How did you get into business for yourself?
This is my second take in entrepreneurship. So in university, I was recruited actually to run a student house painting company. In Canada, they have a franchise model for students where you don't necessarily buy the franchise, but you invest your time. They teach you, they give you essentially a business in a box and a mentor, and they teach you a system for how you can go out, find houses to paint. So we're talking if you need bedroom walls or exterior windows or fascia or whatever the project is. I was a contractor for the summer. So I learned a marketing system for how to find those customers, how to sell paint jobs to people, and then ultimately how to hire, train, and project manage to get the work done. And so I was 18 years old, being running a company I never knew how to do before. That's how I really fell in love with entrepreneurship. And I did that for about 7 years. Of that time, 3 years I ran the painting company, but 4 years after that, after I graduated university, I was actually a startup coach or a general manager with them, where I was teaching other students how to start from nothing and take them to sometimes 5-6 figures over a 6-month period.
I find that a fascinating model. I think it's really fantastic that you had an opportunity like that, because most of us, going to school, there might be a job involved in terms of making money to help pay for housing and food and classes and all that stuff. But this opportunity to really see how to build something successful from a business standpoint is really interesting to me.
Yeah. And it was really a crash course to business. And then at some point in uni, I was like, so if I want to be an entrepreneur, I'm taking biochemistry. I'm not going to be taken, this is in my head, I'm not going to be taken seriously if I don't have a business degree. So I started looking into maybe minoring in business, but it took one marketing course and one business leadership class for me to realize how much of a joke those classes were, in terms of they have nothing on getting real hands-on experience in the real world. And I find that now universities are really pivoting to more of a hands-on experience because they really have to. But that's when I realized, I was like, oh man, I've learned so much in the couple of years since I've been doing running the program at that point. And that's what really gave me I really got my hands dirty, literally, into the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. And I think that Student Works kind of ruined me for employment, because I saw how like they would open the program with like, okay, it's January, you have until September to make money. How much do you want to make this summer? And it's literally like, here's the roadmap to making $30,000 of profit. And you follow it, right? And it gave me not only the like a taste of what it takes to be a real entrepreneur with the 80-hour work weeks and stuff, but it gave me the blueprint to build on the Kickstarter product launches that I do. Because if you look at Kickstarter, where I've been spending my time in the last 4 years, like helping someone take a product from zero to Kickstarter is very, very similar to launching a painting company, in that you need to have a certain financial goal you're going after. You need to have a certain roadmap, and you need to make sure that you're marketing and selling, and like it's essentially the same 6-month blueprint that I had learned and executed with Student Works over 7 years.
How did you get into the product-based, world in the first place? Was that just sort of a random connection thing, or did you have an interest in that?
No, I had no interest at the time.
Like so many of us, right?
Yeah, it just, I mean, look, I love it now, of course, but after Student Works, I traveled the world for a bit. I tried the corporate thing. I lasted all of 3 months each time, because it wasn't for me. That's what I meant, like how Student Works ruined me for employment, because I love the freedom, and I know how to create that freedom for myself. So the Kickstarter thing happened when I was living in London, being a marketing consultant, very, very general, very not niche down, very like barely paying the rent type thing. And when I moved back to Toronto, literally the first event I went to, I met the founder of my first campaign, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I've been thinking of kickstarting this." I'm like, heard of that Kickstarter thing, but I don't know anything about it. And then we kept talking, and then over a few weeks, he eventually like pitched the idea well enough. And then he's like, "Look, I'm the product guy. You know how to sell. Let's just partner up. And like, do you want to be the marketing lead on this launch?" And I'm like, well, nothing better to do. Let's try this. And it ended up like that first launch, we made all the mistakes in the book. It was a classic disaster. We needed to raise about 50K at the time, which was the goal, but we raised about 17,000, which was like absolutely not enough that we needed to bring this to market. So after that launch, it was an epic failure, but we realized that it probably wasn't the product that failed, it was the execution of the launch. And after looking at what it takes to really be successful on Kickstarter, we really we knew you needed an audience going into it, but we didn't really respect it to the magnitude we needed to actually be successful.
To really chase and harness an opportunity around a crowd that's interested in the product coming out and all of that, and nurture that.
Buy it too. And so that's really what we changed, is we respected the process a lot more. And over, I think, 3 months, we planned for a relaunch. And that relaunch is when we hit 600,000 in sales, and the launch really like went viral at that point.
That's pretty significant. 17K versus 600K is a nice step up.
Yeah. And it was like, of course, we can get into like what changed, but ultimately it was just like we decided not to give up, and we just tried again. And that still wasn't when I wanted to do Kickstarters. It happened when like a friend runs a big meetup group in Toronto, and he asked the founder to speak at the event. And the founder was like, "I'm too good for this. No, Khierstyn, you're going to go do the talk." And I was like, "Oh God, fine, whatever." So I go and do the talk, and sitting in the audience is the founder of Taplock, my second campaign. And in the talk, I was like, "Look, here's what we did to go from 17,000 to 600K. And David comes up to me after. He's like, "Hey, I have this awesome product. Can you just like quote on it?" And I was like, "Sure, whatever." I go to their office. I see this beautiful padlock you open with your fingerprint. And I was like, "I'm in." And we did that campaign, raised over 350K, I think, for it. And then I still wasn't into crowdfunding. I was still dead set against niching down. It took, I think, the third campaign with Manish Sethi of Pavlok to again do multiple six figures at that point. And then a good friend basically sitting me down and being like, you need to focus on crowdfunding. You need to be the Kickstarter chick. Stop trying to have this massive message of being just a marketing consultant, because that doesn't mean anything to anyone when you're not specific. And I was like, well, I guess I have to make the choice. And I made the choice. And then it just like everything's history at that point. I niched down, I focused, and 4 years later, here we are.
What do you think is different between people who are looking to bring product to market who kind of do it? I mean, I think a lot of people have this idea, and for those who don't know, my many background also involves medical manufacturing and the concept of selling things like from a product-based background. And a lot of people just feel like if I have a great thing, if I build it, they will come. And I'm curious from your perspective, the advantages of utilizing some of these newer online tools like Kickstarter or direct to Amazon or whatever it might be to bring something to market versus kind of old school version of I'm going to send out flyers and go to trade shows and, do various things that are more traditional in product sales.
I'm going to talk about, I just did a podcast interview for my podcast, Launch and Scale, just plug that. But, this is not crowdfunding, but it is exactly what people in the startup space have to go through to be successful. So I want to tell the story. Marcus runs a company called HostAway, which is a software solution in the travel space. So if you have like 10 plus different Airbnb locations, he helps you manage it all on one platform, which is cool. And they are one of the fastest growing tech enterprise solutions right now. In 2 years, they went from 0 to 38 employees globally. Just massive success. And when he mentioned like that many companies in his space have failed to get traction, but his company is getting traction because they do one very specific thing. The other companies that have failed to get traction focused on designing a beautiful product with all these features and putting all this time and money into designing something great prior to trying to sell it. But what Marcus did is they focused on bare minimum and MVP, quick and dirty. What is the minimum solution they need to do the job? So they focused a little bit on an MVP, massively on sales. And then from sales, they're able to use customer feedback and revenue generated from sales to create a product around what their customer wants. So when you look at what is the difference that Kickstarter allows versus past Notion, and most people that fail really have the idea, build, and then they will come. Unfortunately, if you build something, you're sinking all this money into it without any validation or proof that people actually want your product. Not only that, but even if you have a product that people want, you design it, and then you try to launch it, you're going to get customer feedback saying, I don't want this thing to have 3 legs. I think you should do a zipper on it, or whatever that thing is, right? Customers develop and design your products with you, and the companies that are successful design great products around their customers. So if you want to know what Kickstarter allows, it's hopefully breaking the old notion of build and then sell. It's sell and then build. But the caveat being that now with Kickstarter, you cannot crowdfund for an idea. So you need to have an actual product at this point, but Kickstarter forces you to really get that validation and that feedback to create great products and brands.
I think it's a really interesting concept because, and in today's world, we're very fast moving. It's very organically intertwined. And I think it requires that. And I think you're right. I mean, I think there's a lot of much better design and much better product opportunity given that scenario versus we're going to make everything perfect. And it's going to be the colors that, everyone within our team loves. And then you get it out in the market and no one wants to pick it up because it's not hitting their triggers. Or even if you go through massive R&D and or have some level of feedback, it often isn't big enough. And I think these online platforms offer for a broader sort of test market to play around with those things.
So much. And that's really, and it, of course, there's all these like little little notes like, you shouldn't go to Kickstarter without a validated product, but it allows you a chance to get real customer feedback to continue design an awesome product with features that you as a founder may never have thought of in real life, right? So
when you work with people, whether it's because I know you have had a few different models and ways that you work with people depending on what they need. When you work with people, are you helping them go through that first version of product validation before they even bring it to a Kickstarter campaign or something equivalent? How do you work with people
Sort
now?
of. Like, I don't do, if someone comes to me and says, can you help me validate my product? I want to make sure they've done a bit of groundwork and homework first to make sure their product will sell. But so I'm not necessarily the product designer, but I'm the marketer behind launches. So what that means, I don't market launches for people, but I help people, I give people a system and a process for identifying who their customers are, but even talking to their customers and interviewing their customers around their product to find out what really matters to them so that the founder knows what features they have to put into the product, but ultimately what is it about the product that people love. So it's like, it's a way to really line up your positioning with your sales page. Like, what is it exactly that your customers have said they really resonate with so that you can best position your product? So it works two ways essentially with our method for talking to the customer, and really through customer discovery allows you to design a great product around your customers, but also be able to market your product using your customers because you have the intel, you've tested to see what price they want to pay, you've tested to see what features they love, which ones they hate, so you know which ones to have to lead with the forefront of your marketing. Like, so it's all coming down to use your customers to create your brand.
Totally. I love that. So let's spin this a little bit from this sort of external piece in terms of the clients and the type of work that you do to your business on the inside. What do you think, because you've had a few different iterations as we talked about, and now you've moved from a very much an agency model, working one-on-one with these launches, to more of an training model, if that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah. So like crowdfunding university almost, but not university.
What was, I know it's been a recent switch for you.
Yeah.
What was the impetus for that? What were some of the issues with the agency model for you?
So
I ask because a lot of people struggle with this, I think, especially when we're in the business of selling our brains for a living. The question is, how do we make this work in a way that feels great?
Well, what I love about agency is it allows me a chance to go deep with clients, like really, really deep. And the control freak side of me allows me to like run the project and know that things are getting done based on my expectations and on schedule and stuff. So I think from a control standpoint, that's what I love about agency. What I do not like about agency is that it'll actually ruin why I got into doing what I'm doing in the first place. I can only reasonably work with about 5 people at a time before burning out. And if I tried to double that and scale, I have 2 choices. I can deliver a subpar service to my clients by stretching myself too thin and burning out, or I start to bring on project managers. And if you look at the inside of an agency that wants to scale, suddenly the founder, and so me at the top, let's just say there's me and I have 25 employees. Suddenly I am not at the grassroots level with campaigns, helping them with marketing strategy or helping them with product positioning, because frankly, I need to figure out how to pay salaries. And I just saw this as I started to scale. I was really not in alignment with what I wanted to do, because I want to stay in a consulting strategy spot with people. And I can't do that if I'm trying to grow an agency where I need to then transfer into being a CEO. So that was one thing I didn't like where my role was going. But the second thing is I did not like the model of carrying salaries or freelancers. And I'm sure it definitely could have been like a mismanagement on my part, but frankly, the people I want to work with don't necessarily have the budget to pay massive agencies up front. And I can't run a company based on commission only for launches because of overhead that we have. So there are a lot of disconnect I have with like, okay, well, first off, I don't want to scale this thing. So if I don't want to scale this thing, I'm kind of stuck working with only 5 people, which means I can't have the impact I want to with the rest of the product launch ecosystem.
You also can't make the money that you want to make. Let's be frank.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like,
not just you, that's true for anybody who's found themselves in this position. That's part of the reason I wanted to talk with you today, is because I think many of us really struggle with this concept of, you know, this expectation that we need to grow bigger, better, faster along a particular model that involves all of a sudden, and I'm not sure people understand this. This happens in the design world. It happens a lot in the just general service world, where to become successful, we do end up with this hierarchy within our firm, and we're left at the top, and all we're doing is selling.
yeah. And I love selling, but I don't want to have to sell.
And managing people, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And like, not to mention, like, there's a few different kinds of people and relationships I can have at the agency level. I want to be able to work one-on-one with projects I fall in love with. I don't want to be at the point where I'm like, crap, I have $50,000 a month overhead, so I'm going to start taking on projects that I'm not in alignment with, I don't like, or just for the wrong reasons. And so there was just like, so there were just a lot of things that didn't jive with ultimately what I had to decide I wanted. And that's why I struggled for 3 years with it. Cause I'm like, do I grow? Do I not grow? Okay, cool. So I just like, while I loved the projects and the clients I was working with, it's just like, I felt that inability to get to the next level with that model.
It's also very hard on cash flow.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it can be very hard for all of us to figure out how to navigate that when it's sort of this feast or famine version of a project too.
Yeah. And of course, there are ways to scale agencies, and it's very profitable for people, but I learned over 3 years that it was not a model that I should follow.
So tell us more about what you're doing now and how you're working with people.
Yeah, so I now, I went from the one-on-one model, selling either consulting for brands through or managing launches for people. And after going through the 3-year thing that I did, about 6 months ago, I committed to transitioning into a group coaching model. So I got involved with Sam Ovens Consulting.com program. And in the first module, he took a look at the cash breakdown and the profit breakdown of agency model and consulting versus leverage group coaching. And it was like, okay, agency, you can probably do, say, 20 to 40% profit if you're really, really good. But leverage group coaching, you're looking at more the 40 to 70% profit after marketing costs and stuff, because there's very little overhead with those programs when you get started. And that for me, he's like, okay, massive overhead, can't scale, but infinite scale, really good profit. And I was like, and that I think is the moment it really clicked for me, that I was like, that's why I've been struggling to scale past where I'm at, because it's not the right model for me. And I was like, boom, that's it. I have to get away from agency, and I have to focus more on being able to work with more people. So I knew from being in the industry and feedback from clients, and I had a beta membership group going on at the time. So I had a fairly good idea of what that would look like if I transitioned into a program. So just to give you a sense of what that is now, you get 2 levels of essentially support. It's not a course, but you get a step-by-step blueprint taught over video and worksheets and like a blueprint essentially. But you also get that with the support of a Facebook group and office hours twice a week. So it's essentially, instead of done for you like agency, it's a done with you program. And so I designed that based off doing a few customer interviews and really just seeing that my process with agency and my process with launches was exactly the same every single time. And so it meant, okay, I will need to systemize everything I do into like a blueprint and then find people to buy it. So I started pitching it. Whenever I got leads, I started pitching this new program, and eventually I got 2, 3, 4, 5 people buying it. And I was like, hey, this thing is really happening. That was enough. And then I essentially wrapped up the launches I was doing and focused 100% on launch and scale.
Let's talk a little bit about this juxtaposition between, because I think that this concept of the coaching world, people either love it or they question it because they've never heard it before, or maybe they don't love it. And I think there's a lot of murkiness around it when you take something that's maybe more traditionally a consulting type business or consulting type work, where there are significant deliverables and things like that, where people can be like, I can see what I'm getting out of from my money, to this more, I'm going to hold your hand as you walk through a process that isn't as deeply embedded. What are some of the drawbacks of doing your work in that way, in this new way? Are there any, or do you feel like it's actually just as empowering because people are kind of taking the reins themselves?
There's a couple. First off, I think this model is better for most entrepreneurs because I feel that the agencies in this space can really run the whole launch for a person, and this entrepreneur doesn't have a system they can replicate for future launches. All they have is a massive bill and very little profitability on that product launch. But by looking at designing a system that's not necessarily a budget solution, but a system designed for the founder or their project manager to go through a program where they have support to do this, gives them a model to really figure out how to launch products properly. This isn't just, while it right now is positioned as a Kickstarter course, you can take the exact blueprint and execute a strong product launch on any other platform just because of what we teach. But I think that's the main benefit, is that you learn a system and you learn to be a better marketer and a better salesperson to elicit and rally people behind a product launch, which, let's face it, these entrepreneurs need to be launching products at least every 6 months with it. So there's that model. The downside that I found is I'm learning that when I get on strategy calls with people to pitch them on the program, I can't go into it with, oh, let's try to sell as many people as possible. Because if I sell someone that doesn't have the marketing budget, someone that does not have the time to do a product launch, someone that has a shitty product, it all comes back to it just being a disaster situation of a launch. So I now have to essentially go through every sales call I have with people as a way to weed out the weak.
And go through an application process so that it's worth
application process. And so that is something I've learned, is like, when I'm not, it's funny because when I'm not doing the launch myself, I can see weaknesses in other students, or essentially, I guess I forgot what I was like the first time I launched a product. And I'm now quickly seeing like where I need to plug the holes in it. And I need to be like setting really good expectations. But I think even I've set a lot of the expectations in the program, but making sure that when people go to launch or go through those phases where, for example, a Kickstarter campaign, you cannot have a full-time job and have 50 kids and let your campaign just do its own thing. Like, I think I have to.
It's not going to happen without a little bit of work. Yeah,
exactly.
Do people come in with that expectation? I do think that there's a low barrier to entry to a lot of this stuff, not just in product launch, but in entrepreneurship in general. And it can seem very like, if I just have the thing, then I'll wake up in the morning and there'll be thousands and thousands of dollars in my account and I won't have to do anything. And as we know, it's not that easy.
Honestly, like, Kickstarter's success rate is 37% for a reason. Kickstarter has an approval process. So as long as your product proves that you have it and it fits their criteria, you can launch. But I find that, yes, people do get on calls with me and they're like, oh, I need to build up an audience? Crap. Okay. So I think like I'm seeing that entrepreneurs, even if the program says you cannot have you need to be fully dedicated to this, I think even in practice, students may not watch those modules, or they might think I'm an exception or whatnot. So even in practice with my coaching, I have to find a way to, through 40 people in the group, like really find a way to communicate that and make sure that, 3 months after I let them into the program, that they remember that you need to do everything in a specific way. You need to follow the checklist. You need to follow the system to a T, or you are going to fail. And I think It's just been amazing going through, again, creating that MVP, and based on it being field tested, be like, oh God, okay, we got it. Okay, this is where people are struggling, because I just forgot that people don't eat, breathe, and sleep launch promo when you go live, right? It's just something
they're not all like you. Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. And don't get me wrong, we are getting awesome results with the program, but it's just like, again, everything's, you don't know what you're getting into until you do that. And I think that I can do a better job scaring people so they are ready. Like a good scare, right?
Yeah, helping prepare them for what it really is. What I really like a lot about what you're doing now is that replication part of it, whether that's replicating this concept to a different platform or bringing a new product to market. Because I think a lot of times when we get into this space, or into any space, and we're hiring somebody to help us with it, particularly with something like product launch, we have these great big dreams. We have these imaginings of millions of dollars, like just right out of the gate, becoming an overnight instant success. Mm-hmm. And then there's nobody there to hold our hand after the fact and go, okay, what's the next step? Because that product doesn't go away. You still want that to have legs, even if you're bringing something new to the market as well. And so I think what's cool about what you're doing is that there's also conversation around business building and how do you actually create something sustainable out of this, which is not always the case if you're kind of paying for a one-shot hit.
Here's how to launch a product. Yeah, I think that's really the biggest change in the last 12 months for me, is I'm taking the conversation way past Kickstarter into how you can build a sustainable brand for yourself.
Mm-hmm. So along the way for you, as you've built a sustainable brand for yourself, what do you think has been one or two biggest issues for you as you built your business?
How I spend my time.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be trying to do everything. So I found that I could make very little progress in key areas of my business because I was trying to do 10 projects at once. Mm-hmm. I didn't have very clear, defined priorities. So I was trying to tackle everything and then some, which means I was frequently burning out. I wasn't making progress in certain areas, which didn't motivate me. And I think the biggest shift is I've really gone like the essentialism route, where instead of doing everything or trying to do everything badly or everything poorly, I focused on the 20% of things in my life and really what the top 2-3 priorities are that will help me move the needle. And so instead of focusing on a ton of stuff, I went deep on the few things that really mattered. And what has happened is my to-do list actually gets done every day, because the 25 different things I could do, I look at the top 2 that actually are going to make the biggest impact on those goals, and I do them. So I think happiness has gone up. I've become way more focused on defining my goals and what are the actions I am going to take regularly to do that. And I think that's been the biggest shift for me, just in terms of like happiness and like, man, I can go deep on a couple of things versus got to do all the other things. I think that's been the biggest shift for me.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. So I ask everybody this question on the show. And for those who don't know, you and I have actually worked together ourselves for a while now. And so you might have a different definition of this now than when we first started working together. I don't know. But I ask everybody what Zen money means to them.
Oh, that is easy. When I first started with you, I'm pretty sure I didn't look at my my money situation, my bank statements. I didn't know how to read profit and loss. Go figure. I was just scared because I didn't understand it, and scared because I was like, I just feel like I'm mismanaging it, so I'm just going to hide it under a rug. So that's where we started. And I think where Zen money means to me is where I can open QuickBooks and everything's balanced. But not only that, I actually am on top of the numbers and I understand the numbers and I know where healthy margins are. And I have a understanding, not necessarily me managing it, but Zen means no stress finances. And no stress finances to me means that I just know that part of my life is growing, it's being managed well, and I actually feel a little financially literate with that. So Yeah.
I think you're a lot more financially literate than you even think you are. And I think that's true for a lot of people too, coming from this, like, I don't know what I don't know, is there something else behind this mystery door? And, but yes, thank you. I think that's a great answer. Appreciate that.
No worries.
If you were going to leave people with one, given your various learnings over your time as an entrepreneur, if you were going to leave people with one tip, what would it be?
I think you have to figure out what you really want to do and how you really want to do it, and figure out how to get that model to work for you. And stop trying to do everything. I think, I've really taken in the Principles of Essentialism, the book, and how really there aren't many things that really drive the needle. And if you feel like you're spinning on the hamster wheel, making no progress, it's just about defining where you really want to go and what's going to get you there.
I don't think, that's perfect. That's it in a nutshell.
That's it.
That's it. Khierstyn, if people want to learn more about you and more about the work that you do, where can they find you?
Yeah, I think two things. My website with all content, and if you want to book a call, talk about your product launch or whatnot, you can go to khierstyn.com. My name is impossible, so it's spelled KHIERSTYN.com.
We'll put that in the notes for everyone to find. Of
course. And apart from that, if you're into podcasts, we're on iTunes under Launch and Scale, and you can also go to YouTube and search my name, and you will find a YouTube channel with a ton of content as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Cool.